it's also the occasion to celebrate the anniversary of our project. We started 1 year ago. We had our kickoff meeting in Brussels in October last year. And I have to say that at that time, we thought our consortium will meet again in person for this conference. It's obviously not the case. We are still behind the screen of our computers. In April, we had our second consortium meeting. That was our first large online event that we organized. And I remember that although before the meeting I was a little bit concerned, the meeting went very well. And I was wondering this morning, why did this meeting went well? Why did it give me such a good feeling? And I think the reason is that even if I was sitting on this chair behind this same screen, it was the first time that I had, for a short period of time, interaction with a lot of people at the same time. And at the end, I think during this meeting, I felt that I was less alone. I was part of a group or a community. So my ambition, my wish for today is to recreate this feeling. I hope that when we end the meeting tomorrow, we'll all feel that we've been part of a group, thanks to all the interactions that will take place in the next hours. Of course, it's a challenge because since April, there's been a lot of this online meeting. And I think there is this kind of fatigue from this virtual event, but we kept that in mind when we designed the meeting. So you will see that there will be many opportunities for interactions. And we hope you will all be able to actively participate. We hope we will not have too many technical issues. And that at the end of the day, tomorrow, when we end the meeting, all this interaction will help us feel that we're part of a group. So that's really my ambition for this meeting. So maybe a first question is, who is in this group? What is the profile of the people behind the screen? You probably know that in SHERPA, we have 3 communities that work together. We have science, society, and policy. And what I would like to do now, I would like to invite you all to turn on your camera and also activate the gallery view that you have as the option on Zoom so that we can all see each other. And what I propose to do is to ask you to wave if you think you belong to any of the 3 groups that we have in SHERPA. So I propose to start with what I expect to be the larger group, which is science. So if you think that you are a researcher, if you belong to the science group, can you please wave to the screen? Thank you for that. So I looked before at the participants, and I think it's about half of the people who attend today. If you represent the civil society, can you please wave now? There's a few. You need to click on the button to scroll, to see all the images that we can see on our screen. And finally, how many of you work for a public institution or represent a policy group? Hello. Hello to everyone. So thank you all for this. Let me start now with my introduction. I will say a few words about SHERPA, and I will present the agenda and also give a few practical information. So I need to share my screen again for that. So a few slides, 2-3 slides really, to remind to everyone what is SHERPA. So Sustainable Hub to Engage into Rural Policy with Actors, that's the full name. It's a support action funded by Horizon 2020. We are going to work for 4 years, and you see here the date. So we started, as I said before, in October last year. We'll end in September 23. So that means after this annual conference, we hope to have another 3 after that. So we have 17 partners, and ECORIS is the coordinator. An important point here, you see the website of our project. So it's not sherpa.eu, but it's ruralinterfaces.eu. So I invite you all to go and visit it. Why do we do this project? Why SHERPA? Two needs that I mentioned here. the first need is to better use the results of research projects. And the second need is to empower key actors in the development of public policy. These are really the two starting points of SHERPA. And that's the two things we are doing, trying to better use research results, working with people to inform policy. How do we do that? You see on the top right, we use research results. We prepare summary to feed discussions in what we call multi-actor platforms. So we have the ambition to create 40 local maps in the countries at regional, national level. We have more than 20 operating now already since almost a year. But we'll have 40 when we'll be in full operation at the end of next year. We also have an EU map that takes the EU perspective of the work that is done on the ground in the local multi-actor platform. And the outcome of this work are recommendations, information that will inform future policy to EU rural areas. So this is really the concept of the project. And one thing that is very peculiar about SHERPA is that we have a very flexible programming. We have a mechanism, but the topics are not defined in advance. And what we did this year, we decided to focus all the work of the project as a contribution to the important initiative that has been launched by the European Commission earlier this year, which is the work on the long-term vision for rural area, which is the topic of this conference as well. So what have we done since a year? We have set up 22 multi-actor platforms. So this platform gathers the three actor groups, science, society, and policy. So it's quite a performance, I have to say. We really didn't spend a lot of time to think about how we would do. We already in January had the platform up and running, and that has allowed us to deliver already a lot of activity this year. We have made several publications. You can find them on the website. I think they've been sent as well in the invitation to this conference. I mentioned here in particular the synthesis that we prepared on opportunities and challenges, and an overview, a synthesis of foresight and scenario studies as well that have been published on our website. The maps this year, they implemented a Delphi method that will be explained later in the afternoon into details. So each map has implemented a Delphi method to discuss their vision for the future of their territory for 2040. And all this is documented in what we call in our project position paper. So we have 20 map position paper. And we summarize the outcome of all this work in one unique document that we call a SHERPA position paper. So this has been circulated to you on Friday afternoon. And the meeting today is a contribution to this work. So the conference will provide input to help us to finalize this position paper. What we sent on Friday is still a draft. We need to add some information for some of the maps. We need to finalize the discussion that we had in the EU map. And we need to make the last section, which will be the final message. So that's an important element. This conference will feed and help us to finalize this document. And you see the second point I indicate here as well is that the conference for us is important to help to improve how we engage people in our multi-actor platform. And this afternoon, the focus is more the first objective. So we will discuss in details, and you will be able to discuss in the breakout sessions ideas for the contribution to the long-term vision. We will continue tomorrow morning, but tomorrow morning in the breakout session that we'll have, we will discuss into more details how to engage the different actors in the process of the long-term vision, but also in the process of the platform that will continue to operate for the next 3 years in our project. So the agenda is given here. So after my introduction, there will be an introduction presentation to the long-term vision for rural area and the work of SHERPA. So We'll first hear from Maria Gaffo from the European Commission, from DG Agri, who will introduce the work that the Commission is doing on this long-term vision. Then we have two colleagues from Nord-Regio who will present the work that SHERPA has done in the maps. And we'll have three short interventions from three colleagues from Spain, from Romania, and a representative for the EU map who will briefly explain what has been done in this multi-actor platform. Then we'll have the coffee break, and we'll have the place we leave for the exchange interaction in the breakout sessions. You see the groups that are indicated here. We have a short break after that before the reporting session, and we aim to end the meeting at 5:30 today. Tomorrow, we start at 9:30. So we will start with a small recap of what happened today, and then we'll have a very interesting panel discussion. So you see here the name of the three invitees who have accepted to join this panel discussion. So we have the chance to welcome tomorrow Mario Miluchev, who is a director at DG Agri. We'll have Hannes Lorentzen for Forum for Synergy, and our colleague from Nord-Regio, Karen Refsgaard, who represents the research component. As you can see, we try to have in this group, again, policy, society, and research. Then we have a break, and then we go to this second objective that I mentioned before, which is about the process to engage with stakeholders. So we'll have an introduction to this topic, and then breakout session that are indicated here. And you will be assigned to these groups. Okay, you will give further details on how it works in practice in Zoom later today. Then we have a reporting back, and we will close the conference tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Conference rules. So I think, Enrique, you've been mentioning that before. Please indicate your name when you join the conference, and you have the possibility to change your name after you've joined. So go to the participant button in the toolbar, then click more and rename yourself. It's important when we want to give you the floor, if you want to ask a question, and when you'll be able to contribute to the exchange in the breakout session as well. So please do that if it's not done yet. Keep your microphone muted during the event. Mute to turn your microphone off. Use your headphone if necessary. We encourage you to use your camera when talking. You see here the how to activate the muting and the video. And very importantly, if you want to ask something, please write in the chat. We have colleagues who are monitoring that. Raise your hand so that we can take questions and make it an interactive moment. We encourage you to tweet, of course. You see SHERPA conference, that's the hashtag that we propose to use for today. I propose to kick now the session 1. I see we're right on time, 2:16. So I will give the floor to Maria Gaffo, who will give us an introduction to the long-term vision for rural area.
So thanks a lot for inviting us to participate in today's conference, but especially I would like to thank you for the work that you have done this year, because we really appreciate that you are providing a contribution to the vision. We have a lot of ambitions to put forward on the agenda, and we need the support from everybody. So your help is really appreciated. I have prepared a short PowerPoint presentation just to give you some hints on where we are. So I will present you where we are and what we aim to do with the vision for rural areas, which, starting with a little background, I would like to quote some wordings from our president, Mrs. von der Leyen, referring to the rural areas and highlighting that they are the basis of Europe. And I think it is, I'm right to say that the roots of Europe are in rural areas. And I think the roots of all Europeans are in rural areas, even if now, of course, the population in the cities is quite important. But I think everybody in this meeting and in Europe has finally the background in rural areas. And I think it is also important, this compromise for our president, highlighting that we will preserve our rural areas and invest in their future. And she announced at the same time that we will come with this long-term vision for rural areas, trying to reply to this concern. Looking and putting some numbers on the table, in terms of population, rural areas in the European Union represent around 26% of the total. So this means around 116 million people and 76% of the territory. So as you can see, and of course all of you are aware, in terms of population, the rural areas have a much less density than average and the situation in the EU. But in terms of territory, it is almost three quarters of the total. So it is a very important number. In terms of jobs, I think it is more or less aligned with the population. So it's 27% of total EU jobs. Looking at the challenges, and I see that you are also in the framework of SHERPA trying to identify what are the main challenges. I think in more or less in all European countries, rural areas face the big challenge of access to public and private services. And there I highlight the issue of internet. 40% lack access to high-speed internet. And this issue, of course, it is very relevant for some ages like the young, the children, etc. So this creates an additional problem related to generational renewal, which is also a challenge in general in the European Union everywhere. So we have an aging situation. If you look at the rural areas, this aging it's even more exacerbated. If we look at the remote rural areas, then the numbers go really, really high. Then looking at the situation and the forecast for population development, we see that 60% of the rural population lives in regions which are demographically shrinking, so that they are losing population. Here I put you the graph about the situation of internet. So the blue line is the total and the orange line is the situation in rural areas. And I think we have to recognize that there has been a very, very big progress since 2010. So in 2010, the access to next generation internet, it was less than 10%, and now we are around 60. But still, there are 40% of people in rural areas that do not have access to this good internet, with the associated challenges in terms of, for example, access to online services like e-health, e-education, etc. And especially now in this situation of pandemic, this access to internet has been felt by many people as really essential. And I was in a presentation to some mayors of rural areas in some regions of Spain, and I was told that a number of families in some little villages were even considering to move to the city because the kids were not able to follow the online education during these months of lockdown. So I think this issue of internet is really a top priority to try to, on the one hand, of course, facilitate that the rural population benefits from the opportunities, but also for them to access to the basic services that can be provided through this means. Looking at the demographic trends, here I present you the perspectives from ESPON project for the year 2032. And the regions that you see color are those that face particular challenges. And you see that I think most of all European Union countries, in some parts of their territory, they are affected by this risk of shrinking or losing population. And of course, the situation is different. And so, for example, in the eastern part, you see very, very big demographic decline in recent years. It has been a very, very fast process. In my country, Spain, as well as in other countries like Portugal, France, or Italy, this has been a quite a slow process that started in the 50s, and the population was disappearing very slowly. And now the situation is that in many places are really depopulated. And then the situation in the Nordic, of course, it's a different situation, also associated to difficult weather conditions. And there, as you know, the efforts are going also into the managing this shrinking population. So how to help the people to live better with this declining population situation. These are the challenges, but of course, there are many opportunities ahead. First, of course, where we look at this circular and bio-based economy, resources for the bio-based economy come from the rural areas. So I think the big opportunity it is there, and I think there are many, many chances to increase the value added that stays in the rural area, because sometimes rural areas just provide the resource, which is managed elsewhere. But I think thanks to the digital, there is possibility to increase the contribution to the added value staying in this rural area. And therefore, of course, the rural areas can contribute to the ecological and digital transition. And I think I would go even further, saying that it is not possible for Europe to recuperate without the contribution from the rural areas to the ecological and digital transition. Well, we are having this remote conference, and I was not following SHERPA last year, but I am sure that probably you had a physical conference. And I think this COVID-19 crisis put a completely different situation that we could ever imagine before. And I think now the people are looking into rural areas with renewed eyes. So first of all, everybody or very large people had telework or is teleworking. For example, here in the Commission, now we are not allowed to go to the buildings and we have to do telework for the time being. And then on the other hand, the people, of course, in this situation of confinement, appreciate further the green spaces. So many people are considering to move forward to rural areas, and there are even some initiatives trying to facilitate this trend. So the opportunities are there, and I think there is a very high chance that they could benefit rural areas. Now going to the vision. The vision in terms of the policy documents is going to be a communication from the Commission that we have scheduled for the second quarter of 2021 for June. And in principle, we will look about this vision in rural areas in 2040 and the actions that we need to put in place in order to achieve it. But we also want to launch a debate on the role of rural areas in society from across the European Union, taking into account the opinions from rural people, from urban people, from everybody. We want to launch a really wide debate on the role of rural areas in society. Why now? First, because we want to signal that the Commission takes rural areas seriously, and because we want to address these pressing issues that I mentioned before, so these demographic challenges, and also this other challenge of access to infrastructure and services. Also because we want to highlight these new challenges and opportunities linked to COVID-19, but also the others I have referred to, and then to try to orientate the actions so that our rural areas can fully benefit from them. How we want to do that? Of course, I think it wouldn't make sense if we do all this from Brussels. This, I think everybody would agree with me. And this is why at the heart of the vision, we place a very wide and big public consultation. Then we also are undertaking an analysis with the collaboration of many people across the Commission. And also we are feeding with the outcome of several projects, including SHERPA, but not only, we have also some other Horizon 2020 projects. And then we have a foresight element that we are undertaking with the help of our colleagues from the Joint Research Center, and which is facilitated by the European Network of Rural Development. It is interesting to see that the commissioners responsible for this vision are three. So first, it is the Commissioner Wojciechowski dealing with agriculture and rural development, then Commissioner Ferreira dealing with regional and cohesion policy. But I think it is interesting to see that the Vice President coordinated the work is Vice President Suiza, which is responsible for democracy and demography. And these two issues normally have never been analyzed in EU policy point of view when looking at the rural area. So I think this is widening the perspective for this initiative. As I said, it doesn't make sense if we make this consultation from Brussels, and this is why we do a big public consultation with a special focus on people living in rural areas, local and regional authorities. The public consultation is going to have different elements that I will present in the next slide, but the timing of the vision is June 2021. And in between, the different proposals for the future CAP, future regional and cohesion policies will be already adopted. This is why, to ensure that the needs of rural areas are duly taken into account in the policy which we are finalizing, the three commissioners sent a letter to the relevant ministers in the different countries, stressing the need to take the needs of rural areas in this cohesion policy and CAP strategic plans. On the state of play, these are the main elements that we are considering for the public consultation. So we had a feedback period for the roadmap, during the month of summer and finishing in September. And then we have an online questionnaire for which you still have some hours to reply in case you didn't do it already. So it is finalizing today. We hope to reach the 2,000 answers. So let's see. And I hope that after this conference, we will get many other replies. We had also made almost 30,000 interviews in all member states in the context of Eurobarometer. And there we had some specific questions on rural areas and in particular about the challenges and the access to infrastructure and services. Then we have many events, including, of course, the SHERPA conference. We have the Foresight thematic group where we have representatives from all EU member states covering also different expert fields and having representatives from the civil society, from the public administration, from stakeholder groups, etc. In March, we will have the final conference organized by the European Network of Rural Development, where we will present the outcome of all these consultation activities. And then, of course, I would like to say that the European Economic and Social Committee and the Committee of the Regions are also looking very closely to rural issues. The Economic and Social Committee adopted an opinion in September and the Committee of the Region in December, providing us some recommendations for the future work on the vision. I also would like to inform you about this initiative, and I would like to encourage also to inform about this and to use it. And it is a package that a colleague from DG Agri has developed, trying to facilitate that any rural group can organize a workshop. So we are providing the material for this workshop in order to capture what is the situation in the rural area, and what are the local examples, stories that could be provided. And the groups that use this package, we would welcome very much if they can report back to us about the conclusions, because this, I think, will be complementing the work that we are undertaking. And I think for us, we are putting a lot of efforts to try to reach the different rural areas across the European Union, but of course it is very challenging. So any support and any help on that would be very much appreciated. So I arrived to the end of the presentation. I forgot to add the email where you can send the contributions in case you participate in this package that I just presented. So I will put it in the chat there. So in case any of you organize any events, we would welcome very much your contribution. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward for the debate today and tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this very clear presentation. So we put in the chat the link, Enrique put the link to the package, I think, for the organizing workshop. I put the link, not the link, to the open public consultation that is closing tonight. So after the meeting, if you have time, you can still reply to the questions. I don't know if there's any question any of you wants to ask a question to Maria. We can take one or two questions before we move to the next presentation. And my colleague Elodie, if you see.
Yes. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. There was actually one observation from Justin Casimir from the Rubismo project related to the COVID-19 and the fact that people tend to move from cities during the lockdown. I don't know, Justin, if you want to add something about that.
Yeah, thank you, Elodie. There's not much to add. I just found it was interesting to see that people in rural areas were maybe thinking to move to cities, while the people in cities were moving to rural areas. So it was a bit, the grass is greener on the other side.
So thank you very much, Maria. So I will give the floor to our two colleagues who've been working very hard in the last weeks, months, I would say. Michael and Louise, they are from Nord-Regio. Michael from the beginning has been active in designing the entire approach for the Delphi and assisting the maps in implementing the work. And since a few weeks now, busy with reading the outcome in the map position paper and preparing the summary. So it's a joint presentation from Michael Kuhl and Louise Armstrong from Nord-Regio. Michael, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Olivier. Can you hear me all?
Yes, it's good.
Far away from the snowy shores of one of the most rural countries in Europe, from Finland. And I'm happy that on the other side of the Baltic Sea, we have my colleague Louisa in rural Sweden right now. Louisa, are you also here?
Yes, I'm also here. Hi, everyone. My name is Louisa Vestergaard, and I've been working with Michael and the team on this job, and also the monitor of the Danish map. And I will be presenting with Michael now.
Very good. Yes, I'm also engaged in the Finnish map. Now we are, before we share the outcomes of the synthesis, I would like to say a very big thank you to all multi-actor platforms and all map members. Many of you are here for contributing to the work on the position paper. And also David from Hutton and Elodie, Bridget and Francesco from Icarus for the work on the synthesis of this. So yes, we started less than a year ago, or less than a year ago, we met all in Brussels in a very different context, 2 months before the Corona crisis hit us. And some of the map members are here and other people that were engaged. But I think since then it was a very interesting journey that we did together with 17 partners in the consortium covering 21 European countries. So allowing a very wide geographical coverage. And since 2019, Olivier mentioned that we had already platforms, multi-actor platforms in 20 countries and plus one at the EU level established. And I think what is something very special about these multi-actor platforms? Louisa, do you want to share some?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, as we have been mentioning this a couple of times now, in SHERPA, one of the key elements is these multi-actor platforms, where we see that these interfaces between science, society, and policy is taking place. And as we rightfully said, there's 20 multi-actor platforms active now, but during the SHERPA project period, there will be 40 of such platforms active and implemented across the EU. And these maps are defined as forums for two-way exchanges of ideas. And up until now, as we've seen in the map position papers, a lot of co-learning and co-creation of knowledge have taken place at regional levels among this wide variety of stakeholders. And today at this first annual conference, this is also, well, the first opportunity for Minimap members to engage with the EU level actors as well as the other maps. So very interesting indeed. Thank you, Michael, for changing. And now we're about to finish the first cycle in the SHERPA project, where we have discussed the experience, challenges, and opportunities in such diverse settings as the SHERPA maps together represent. And this is, as Maria presented before, an input to the long-term vision for rural areas. And today, Michael and I will share the work that has been done with synthesizing these map position papers. And Michael, you'll say a few words about how the maps have been working.
Yes, although unfortunately we haven't never been the chance to travel to Delphi, at least not me in my Finnish map, maybe the Greek map has done that, but Delphi played an important role. So Delphi and the Oracle of Delphi that you can see here on the slide was used in ancient times, or was really considered as the center of the known world. And they used oracles to advise for future action. And then the one who sought the advice and visited the oracle had to implement what the oracle said, or at least those who sponsored the trip to the oracle. So what we did in a modern form, in the Delphi method, we really were able to draw on the expertise of a wide variety of experts, of respondents, and together with them, think about alternative futures, possibilities that are out there, probabilities, how possible it might be for a thing to occur. And then also we had the chance to kind of reiterate our views and our perceptions. So we had the chance to give feedback to several rounds of reiteration, several rounds where they're conducted. And how did we do that? So this Delphi method was, well, kept us busy from the spring this year onwards. First we had preparatory desk research on different trends in different corners of rural Europe, did some context analysis, and then engaged with our multi-actor platform workshops. Some of them took place virtually, some of them still physically. And then we discussed trends, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on the first round. Then the maps, summarized them, developed so-called discussion papers that were given back to map members for comments and reflections, but also many of us developed a survey round that was implemented then from July onwards, where both map members took place or participated, but also other stakeholders. And I'm quite proud to say here that we had more than 1,100 replies to these surveys, so which is quite a high number, I think, and we can be all very proud of us participating in that. And one of them, Aragon, is presenting later, and they had, I think, the most respondents with more than 350. So what we did then with the surveys, again, bringing this back to our multi-actor platform members in consensus meetings, and then based on that, try to develop position papers. And they were due in October, mid-October. Some came in still on this, are still fine-tuned, and then it was time for us to synthesize this. And we'd like to share now some findings, and we would probably start with the challenges. Louise, do you want to take over again?
Yes, I can do that. So this was indeed one of the first things that the maps were asked to discuss. What are the challenges that rural areas are facing? And one of the central challenges that many maps reported were the demographic changes, depopulation, outmigration of young people especially, as well as aging populations. And another central challenge is that of climate change, where it was pointed to that the changes in climate really do affect the activities that are carried out in rural areas and in sectors that are very relevant in rural areas, as agriculture, fishery, and forestry. And then, as Maria also pointed to in the previous presentation, the poor quality infrastructure and long distances to services, as for example, the healthcare facilities, was also a central challenge that the maps pointed to. But there were also many opportunities presented. If you change the slide, Michael, yes, thank you. And here, one of the opportunities is the rise of digitalization and smart ruralities, which a lot of maps had discussed, and especially pointed to that it had been propelled by the pandemic that we are currently experiencing. And another opportunity is the contributions to tackling climate changes. Here, the examples that were brought forward was the development of renewable energy, focusing on shorter local supply chains, and the development of the circular and bio-based economy. Opportunities also had a social character as they relate to the governance and public participation to take place in rural areas, where many maps pointed to increased territorial-based approaches and local empowerment. So there were a lot of opportunities, and as you see in the middle of the screen, a word cloud was generated by all the opportunities that the maps presented. So, but an essential part of this first SHERPA cycle is that have been done has been to discuss the vision for 2040. And need to be said, in the map position papers that we have been going through, many visions for the different rural areas are presented. However, we have tried to join these visions and have clustered them into 7 overarching themes. So in general terms, the maps envision the rural areas in 2040 to be well connected through good infrastructure and good access to services. The climate and the environment should be very much attended to, and all aspects of rural life are based on sustainability principles. That rural areas are digital and smart, and that people are involved in the governance of their territories was indeed very relevant for the visions for 2040. Knowledge and data should be at the heart of rural development, and in the society as a whole, there is a positive image of rural areas. When it comes to the rural economies, they are thriving and they are diverse. And the social capital is strong through a very stable demographic structure and high quality of life. So maybe overall you can say that the challenges have been overcome and the opportunities have been realized. And if we dive a bit into these overarching themes, some of the themes that were mostly shared across the maps are that digitalization and digital technologies are highly integrated in the rural economy. This was a vision that 14 of the maps shared. On a second, as the secondly most shared vision is that the rural economy is diversified. And on a third, and the thirdly most shared is that environmental conservation, climate adaptation, and the biodiversity is improved. And on a shared fourth place is the improved infrastructure, sustainable, innovative mobility models, and access to services, as well as a stable and sustainable demographic structure. So many, many good visions for rural areas. And now, Michael, I think you will dive a bit into the enablers that are presented as central to make these visions a reality.
Yes, thank you very much for this. Yes, so essential work of the last, I think, months or weeks in the maps was in relation to the enablers to reach the vision. So, and here we got a very, very rich picture of enablers. So I really highly and warmly recommend you to look into the position papers. And what we try to do is then from all these hundreds of pages, try to group these enablers under different categories. So in order to allow us to do some kind of comparison and also link them back to the vision. And of course, it's important to say that many of the enablers combine several dimensions. So the one that I highlighted here, smart ruralities and digitalization enhanced, this is a good example. So we need that for infrastructure, for the economy, and for many other issues as well. So, but we came up with this different clusters again, and so one was the from left to right. If I read it, it's improvement and accessibility of infrastructure and basic services is one. Then we had in relation to climate change, and I can link that also, climate change, environment and sustainability, enhancing climate change, environmental services, policies and practices, but also improving land use planning. Then I mentioned the smart ruralities and digitalization, which links up to many of the visions. But then also we had the shift in production, diversification of rural economy needs to be fostered. And here also we need to boost the bio and circular economy. Data knowledge, again, is a cross-cutting element here. And then we mentioned that the telling positive images and narratives from the rural areas as well. Governance was a very important enabler, and both at the local level, empowering local actors and communities on the one hand, but also how they are embedded in the overarching governance framework, like through multi-level governance and territorial governance aspects. For that, we need also improved funding. And finally, we need to work on enhanced or developing even policies and tools for attractiveness, quality of life and well-being, and place young people at the center stage. And again, also we have some top 5 categories here. And as I said, the top 3 among those were, or the top 2 were related to governance issues, empowering local actors, communities, and multi-level and territorial governance enhanced. Before I give some examples from the maps, I would also like to highlight that it's what one member of the Finnish map said, it probably needs to receive this bundle of different mechanisms, approaches, and probably also a change of mentality to enable this vision. Now let me quickly go through some of the, one example of this empowering elements and the rich picture we got. So let's start with the Dutch, and I think this, many of you could subscribe to that. So we need tailor-made solutions for areas and entrepreneurs, so one size fits not suitable. We are lucky because we have, as the Danish map said, strong and value-based communities and active citizens out there. We have local networks, as the Lithuanian map said, that we have collaboration between different policy levels. But we probably need to increase the involvement of rural actors further in civil society as well in rural areas, as Romania pointed at. Finland said place-based development is key, but probably here also we need legislation to better tailor to the issues, better, more flexibility and adequately funded as well. Poland stressed maybe we need regulations to promote this further. We can also look at good practices that we have, like the Czech map working on energy and energy resilience. We have mayors and entrepreneurs disseminating best practice that we can draw on. Slovenia pointing at leader and community local-led development, already balancing different interests and conflicting interests, but we need to work on conflict resolution capacity further. Galicia also, the leader method, gives great impetus to bottom-up approaches. territorial governance by the French highlighted, so in projects from the whole project cycle, project development, implementation, and so on. But we need simplify administrative procedures and so on. And finally, look at the confident and capable communities we have out there to create vibrant social economies and civil society initiatives. I skipped this one, very interesting. The positive images and narratives, you can probably read it later. And we have very good stories also here, but I see we're running out of time. But probably then I would like to end and with also inviting Luis again. So yeah, recommend first to look at the SHERPA and map position papers that will be available in a few weeks' time, and then like some 3-4 key takeaways. And I would start with this: that we have this power for local communities, and this is really a key enabler. Luisa, what do you make of it? What you would like to add?
Thank you, Mike. You just fell out for a moment there, so I didn't hear the last sentence. Just
last sentence. Yes. So our 4 key takeaways. So I think we can build on the powerful local communities that we have and the overarching visions. So you have been looking very much into the visions, so that we have the chance together to build rural areas, or to keep rural areas to be appealing places to live, visit, and work. But all of them are also attractive in their own right, with a high quality of life. And then we should be very much attentive to climate and nature. And
very good summarization. I think, Michael, that this is indeed some of the very important takeaways from going through both the visions and enablers. And these are some of the points that you will see in several of the map position papers. So, yeah.
And we keep on working in the working groups this afternoon, and then some of the issues will, of course, be also taken up in the next map cycle starting in 2021. I think we stop here already, overspending our time, but thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael and Louise. There's been a bit of ups and downs in the sound. Sorry about this, but we understand, we understood. It was not too dramatic and kept us alert. We are forced to listen well, carefully, so not too bad as a problem. Thank you very much, Michael and Louise, again for this presentation, all the work that you have done to make this this contribution that we are preparing on the vision a success. So thanks to the 2 of you and other colleagues from Nordregio. So we are more or less on time for the schedule. We have our next break at 3:15. We have now 3 presentations, what we thought was to dive in 3 specific examples. So you heard now a summary of the finding from the work in the maps from SHERPA. And we thought it would be interesting to share with the audience 3 examples. So we will first hear from the map, one of the 2 maps that we have in Spain, from our colleague Karina. Then we'll continue in Romania with Monica. And then Marion will prepare for the, we'll make a small presentation for the summarizing the outcome of the discussion in the EU map. So I will share my screen. I think it will be easier because I have all the presentation. Okay, so Karina, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Olivier. So my name is Karina Folkesson, and I'm the facilitator of the MAP, the multi-actor platform in Aragon, in the northeast of Spain. And I will try to give you a flavor of how we have been working to come up with the contribution to the long-term vision, and actually what the maps do. And so, as you see, first, the name of the map is Innovación en Desarrollo Rural en Aragón, which is innovation in rural development in Aragon. And Aragon is the region that you see highlighted more or less where the blue circle is in the Spanish map. The map has 11 permanent members, besides myself as the facilitator and the moderator. And the members come from science, so universities and academics, regional government, so the policy side, and civil society. And the main challenges that part of the region at least is faced with relate to low population density, actually almost, or say more than half of the population of the region lives in the capital city of the region, Zaragoza. There's also an ongoing depopulation. There's an aging population with the out-migration of the younger parts of the population. And also there's an out-migration of women from rural areas. So these are the challenges that our work has mostly focused on. Thank you, Olivia. You were ahead of me. So how have we been working? Well, Michael has already briefly explained, and I will more or less repeat how we have worked with the structure of Delphi at the regional level. I'll say first that the map did not exist at the time that SHERPA came into being. So we have created the group, we have created a platform by identifying the relevant stakeholders that are active in the region. Then what we did first was a thorough desk research to set the context for the work. And based on that, we held interviews. And this was in June, so as you can imagine, there were online interviews where we divided the MAP representatives into 2 groups with 5 participants for each interview, and where we discussed the challenges, the opportunities, and the long-term vision that the stakeholders, the MAP members, saw for future Aragon. And based on the outcome of the desk research and the interviews, we then developed a discussion paper, which was submitted in the summer, end of June. While doing that, we had then identified what we thought were the main challenges, the main opportunities, and also we had an idea of what stakeholders considered to be relevant visions, and we started touching upon some enablers. And so based on this, we developed a survey where we asked the survey respondents to rank these different elements, and we had then different criteria for each of the headlines. And we're very happy because we launched the survey in September and we had close to 400 respondents. So that gave us really good material for then developing further a draft position paper, which contained now some very concrete ideas related to what the visions are for rural Aragon, and also what would enable us to overcome the challenges to reach this vision. So with that draft paper, we then held a consensus meeting with the MAP members in early October. And there we really focused on the enablers to try to go more into detail of what would help of overcoming the challenges. And based on that, we drafted the final position paper that we submitted mid-October. And just briefly, again, I have 5 minutes, I think, in total for my presentation. So I just want to give you a flavor of the kind of vision and enablers that we identified for Aragon. And these are all then based on the responses from the interviewees, from the MAP members, and from the surveys. So by 2040, the stakeholders interviewed and surveyed consider that rural Aragon should ideally be economically diverse and sustainable. There will be a better rural-urban connection and the revalorization of the role of rural areas in the society as a whole. And this actually came from the fact that quite a few survey respondents and also MAP members consider there to be a sense of rural citizen being second-level citizens, and that in order to be able to obtain this positive vision for rural Aragon, this perception in society needs to change. Also, there was a general consensus that the link between science and rural areas will be better. And it was expected that society had adopted to all the benefits offered from digitalization. And so then the enablers, how to get there. Well, there were quite a bit of discussion on financial resources, where on the one hand, quite a few survey respondents considered that additional financial resources are needed, whereas with the MAP members, we had rather discussion on if it's more money or if it's a better prioritization among the current budget available. a lot of attention was also devoted to the topics related to governance, where I think everyone would agree on that issues such as coordination and implementation of rural policies, better prioritization between policy goals, and increased participation of rural citizens in the decision-making process, that these are aspects that need more attention. But actually how to carry them out, how to deal with them, that's where we would have to go a lot deeper, and potentially that's the work to be done for next year's, because I think we only really scratched the surface on that. There was also a general agreement on that the digitalization needs to be continued, and there needs to be additional generation of employment opportunities in rural areas. While I should say there was also agreement that the family farm model should be sustained in order to ensure employment. So these were the main findings from our work this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kalina. To summarize in a few minutes, the hard work that was done over the last months. Impressive, 400 replies in your survey, really well done. Monica, floor is yours. I have the presentation. You don't need to share the screen.
Actually, our map is Pennsylvania. This is that we choose for our map for the second interaction with the primary intention, because we intend to work closely with the eco-ruralis NGOs that represent the interest of the very small farms in Romania in this area of Transylvania, but due to the pandemic, so was a little bit difficult to build the group and to form our map according to our initial views. And after that, together with the eco-ruralis, we decided to a little bit change the perspective and to broaden our perspective and to look on the rural Transylvania as a whole. You see on the map the position of our territory, because we decided to have not a thematic map, but a regional focus in our map, and we try to look on this area of Romania, actually the west part of our country. We succeeded to have 11 members in our map, excluding, let's say, the monitor and facilitator. I was and I am the monitor of the Romanian map, and the map has 11 members, 5 coming from the society, 3 from science, and other 3 from policy. And we choose to have not only regional policy makers, but to have some people from the national spectrum, and we engage somebody from the Ministry of Agriculture also in our discussion. And our platform was aimed to support revitalization of rural area, and we try to focus more on peripheral communities, because it is real problem in all Romania, but especially in this part of Romania, due to the depopulation of the area, especially for the peripheral communities. The next slide, please. Was already mentioned that in the SHERPA we using the Delphi method, and here are presented the main steps that we follow in our approach dealing with the discussion with our member maps, and trying to have a broader look on the future of the Transylvania through the eyes of the entire society from representing the Transylvanian area. So in the first step, we perform a desk research on the statistical data, and we look on the existing foresights. And after that, we go more deeper in discussing with our MAP members through some focus group and one interview. We organized 2 focus group and 1 interview with our MAP members, and based of those two elements, we elaborated the MAP discussion paper. Based on the discussion paper and main findings related to the opportunities and strengths, and we try to elaborate a survey, and we discussed it with our MAP members, exactly the content of this survey. And we launched this on the end of July, and during the August, we succeeded to have 104 responses on our survey from the society, policy, and science. All those actors from the Transylvanian area were very, very much involved in promoting and disseminating the survey, and was quite good perspective related to let's say opportunities, challenges, and regional futures pathways according to the survey. After collecting all those information, we analyzed the survey and elaborated the map position paper in the first draft of this document, and organized a first consensus meeting with the MAP members in order to generate the final document in this regard. It was a very long but constructive discussion with our MAP members, because 9 of our members participated directly during this discussion in the consensus meeting, and after that we received from them some inputs on the emails from the email, and we try to harmonize all the point of views that was expressed during the consensus meeting and after the consensus meeting with this the replies, and go back with the final paper to the MAP members and ask them improvement related to the content. And we succeeded to finalize the position paper and to send to the coordinator of the project. Next slide, please. And related to the vision and enablers for the future of rural Transylvania, according to our findings, based on the discussion with the MAP members and data collected through the survey, we was able to formulate shortly desirable future. They want an economically and social viable rural communities that is based on the local approach. That was the main issue, to go more deeper in the local approach, not to see the rural area, let's say, from the perspective of a national approach. Be local. What they want to say through this viable rural communities. They want that population and all the enterprises from all rural communities to have access to the modern infrastructure and services, that the local rural economy to be diversified and multifunctional. They want that the rural urban link to be functional, and last but not least, the family farm system to be sustainable and integrated on the food chain, because in Romania we have big problem, especially related to the family farm and small farms. They are not involved in the food chain, and they are not able to sell their products. Related to the enablers to achieve this vision, we identified two categories of enablers. Some we call it pre-existing condition, and the second category we call it partially satisfied condition that need to be improved in our country. But I need to stress out the fact that the second category, this partially satisfied condition, are prevalent in the vision of the rural Transylvania MAP members. So they think that it's is necessary that this partnership and cooperation between the local actors to be improved. It's necessary to empower the rural communities and to make the rural actors to be more involved and to stimulate them to be involved in the local development. For that, it's very much necessary to have a professionalization of local actors to, let's say, teach them how to do that. Because we have the impression, and they said us that the local people, and we are referring here not only the policymakers but the other actors, are not so much do not know exactly how to discuss and how to stay on the same table and to try to develop common goals and common initiative. Also, we have a lot of, let's say, civil society activities and NGOs acting in rural communities, but not always the people, rural actors, are involved in the action of the rural civil society. This empowering those NGOs could be a solution to let's say disseminate the good practices in rural development. Also, the last point was the fact that the public as a whole is not aware about the importance of the local approach in the development programs of their communities. So it's very important to make the rural communities to be more awareness, to increase the awareness of the public community related to this local approach and the importance of the local vision for the development of their communities, because no one from the national government do not know exactly which are the realities. The local people will know better. So it's better to be involved and to try to go in this direction and to contribute to the development of the vision to be more locally based. And the pre-existing condition, digitization, it's something that was perceived as being there because we have a good internet connection in all Romania and a new infrastructure. Also, the good practices are there and could be multiplied. And the last but not least, the European guidance and programs supporting the convergence and Green Deal are considered being very important in pushing the rural communities in this direction of the local approach.
Thank you very much, Monica, for summarizing all the hard work that was done in Transylvania. Sorry for before. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for this. And it's interesting, huh? You see, we give you two examples here. You see there are some similarities. We see the governance, for example, and some differences that reflect as well the differences that we have in the EU territory. So thank you very much to the two of you. I will move directly to the last short presentation. So this time for the EU map. And we have asked one of the members of the EU map, Maureen, who represents Maureen Eckhart, to give this presentation. Maureen, I have the slides. The floor is yours for the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Olivier. My name is Maureen Eckhart, and I am the president of ELARD, an organization that gathers more than 200 local action groups from around 26 countries in Europe. Myself, I am based in the southwestern of Sweden, and I am one of the members of the EU map. We have a couple of members. We have members from policy, which is DG Agri, DG Regio, European Committee of the Regions. And in members from society, we have the ENRD that involves some rural stakeholders. And then we have 3 non-governmental organizations, which is ELARD, ERC, and Prepare. And they also together co-organize the European Rural Parliament that you might have heard of. We also have 2 members from research, actually 3, but 2 people from one of them, James Hutton and Swiss Federal Institute. And then apart from those people, we have 1 facilitator, 1 monitor, and 2 engagement and communications officers. So we have actually had 3. We started off with a kickoff on the 15th of July, and then we had the presentation of the first outcomes of the discussion from the maps on the 8th of October. And the team then collected our opinions on the first results regarding the long-term vision for rural areas. So during that meeting, we were asked to reflect individually on the trends, challenges, opportunities, and desirable future identified by the maps. And then on the 19th of November, we got an update on the latest SHERPA work on the vision, and we revisited the vision and finally discussed also the enabling factors for reaching the vision. But we did not get ready. So we have preliminary results and on which I think all members agreed. And one more important thing is that the EU map members that participate, they participate in their individual capacity and not as representative of their organizations. But I think that is not true for all organizations, because I am very much representing ELARD, and I think also the people from Prepare and ERCA are doing that. So our results, or our draft on the desired future for 2040, rural areas and their populations are recognized for their vital importance to society. Rural areas are economically diverse and socially vibrant. We are inclusive, connected, and resilient, and we are working in harmony with nature in a sustainable and climate positive way. And we are active participants in decisions affecting our future. Thank you. I'm done now.
Thank you very much, Marion. I unmute myself now. Thank you for this very quick presentation. Indeed, we are running a bit behind schedule. I don't know, Enrique, you want to introduce the next session? Do we want to take a couple of minutes? Is there any reaction in the chat? I don't see as I'm sharing my screen. Maybe I stop doing that.
I think there was a very good comment from Peter Midmore that generated quite some reactions about whether there has been changes from the initial discussion paper to the final position. I don't know if some people would like, I would say we could take a couple of reactions, people explain a bit more the changes for a couple of minutes, and then I introduce in a minute the group discussion methodology, and we go for a break. I've seen personally, sorry, Elodie, if I'm stepping in, but perhaps Ilona could just open up the mic and share the changes that she thinks or happened in her map from the initial stage to now. Just unmute yourself and come in. I want to hear some people.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, basically, I already wrote it in the chat, but I can repeat. I wasn't exactly sure, though, whether the original question was the difference between the SHERPA discussion paper and then the map position discussion paper, or the original discussion paper and the position paper. Maybe you could clarify. But in any case, even between the first discussion paper and our discussion paper, the changes were extensive, quite extensive. I mean, I would say 95%.
Interesting. That's a very interesting. And what were the reasons for that? Any hint on this?
Well, it's not that the original paper wasn't useful. It was very useful for guiding our topics, but the actual data and the actual issues were quite different. I mean, basically it all had to be substituted with new information.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps Bea from the map in Galicia could just share something. I mean, I see long text in the chat. We will save it and keep it, but I like people explaining it a bit, so we make it a bit more dynamic. So I take Bea and then I explain, Olivier, if you don't mind, the group discussion. So Bea, please, can you come in and share?
Yes. Yeah, can you hear me well? And,
yes,
and
fantastic.
sorry, sorry for the long text. In just for our case, for example, let's say that first meeting and the survey, they were mostly for open the box and collect a lot of ideas. So for example, then the discussion paper and the first meeting, we discussed a lot about challenges and priorities, and we asked the people to provide ideas on that. And then in the second phase, and already in the way to the discussion paper, we were mostly focusing on prioritizing all that food and all that stuff. So let's say that that in the discussion paper, we have a kind of a raw ideas of what's the state of play of our rural area and the challenges and opportunities and so on. And in the discussion paper, we are really deepening and looking at what is most important in view of our map and the people that replied to the question. And for example, I was saying in the chat that for example, in the discussion paper at the beginning, we focus on these 7 topics that Sherpa was suggesting to discuss in the maps. But for example, in our case, the discussions and the inputs that we got led us to include new topics, 2 new topics there. For example, the one on governance that then Sherpa was also taking up because it was appearing in more maps. So it was a very nice process, I have to say. Challenging, but a really nice process to see how all those ideas at the end, they converse and yeah. And then the ranking list of what's important for our rural area.
Thank you, Bea. Thank you very much. I think it was very useful to start with a base with a document that helped you then go through a process with your stakeholders to come up with more fine-tuned recommendation, more relevant for your area. I'm happy about that. So just a warning for all of you, when you write in the chat, please be ready to jump in because we might just ask you to repeat what you say and share it with the others. Not everybody might be looking at the chat. And actually, that's a personal approach that I like for this virtual meeting. I like to hear people, not to read that much because I'm paying attention to what people say. So please, let me say this message because now we will go and quickly jump in after a short break to a group discussion where precisely your input and your participation is really crucial. So you should be looking at a short PowerPoint that I created. So as you know, we'll divide you into 6 different groups. We have taken your choices, and in the majority of the cases, we have respected it, but we tried as well to balance a bit on the number of members from the same map and divide them according to some of the groups. So for some of you, perhaps it's not exactly the option that you selected, but we believe that it is a topic that was also discussed in your map and that you can contribute as well here. So we try to balance that a little bit as well. And what do we want to do in this session? Well, there would be two presentations. One, it would be about the lessons and the main messages around that topic that come from an individual map that work specifically as well on that topic, but as well from another Horizon 2020 project that has some link with that topic. So we will hear about the lessons, what they have done, what are the main messages on that subject. Okay. Then, of course, there were other maps and other projects engaged in that topic. So we will have 10 minutes where you can share as well your experience and your lessons and your messages that came out from your map. So we will have 10 minutes for that. And then there would be an open discussion around a key question. So after we have identified and talk about the main messages and on the future vision, desirable vision that we have had for local areas, we want to start the brainstorming on what are the actions that we need to take now from the different stakeholders that we have within your maps to make these visions and these messages a reality in 2040. So we will focus on actions. What is needed to happen now? Okay. We want to collect this feedback and bring it tomorrow to the panel. So the 35 minutes will be dedicated on that jointly brainstorm on what are the implications and the action we need now. And then at the end, we want to allocate shortly 5 more minutes so we can come up to plenary with one statement that is either challenging, what was the most challenging thing that was discussed, either the most provocative statement. So we will try to come up and agree on one in each of the groups, so to report back then in plenary afterwards. As I said, I want people to really be active. Please exchange, please share, please participate. It depends on you. So you will have the chat available. Please use the option raising your hand so the moderator would know who would like to participate, or simply as well, if you feel there is some silence, just unmute yourself and come in. That's better. I would like to remind you that the whole conference is being recorded, but not in particular this working group. So we will gather all the information in a specific whiteboards, but we are keeping record of all that, and it would be included in the conference report afterwards. So without further ado, I don't want to take you away from the coffee. I think we are supposed to start the working group at 5:30, but that will not give us time to prepare a coffee. So Oliver, if it is fine with you, let's say we give 10 minutes instead of 15 for the coffee break. So we try to have a quick one. And then we will start directly the discussions in the different groups. So let's be back at 15:35, more or less. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Enrique. Just technically, people will be directly...
Please do not disconnect. Yes,
yeah,
important.
okay.
Please do not disconnect. You will be moved automatically to your working group or group discussion. Okay. So do not disconnect. Then it would be much more difficult.
You don't need to do anything. You'll go to the meeting
nope.
room directly. Open the session and pass it to you now.
Great, thank you. So I hope you had a bit of time. I'm aware there were some rich and fruitful discussions in some of the groups until the very last minute. So that's a very good sign that we listen to all of you, or we try to give you as much time as we can to listen to all your views. Now we are heading to the end of the day, and we want to get a flavor of the discussions in the different groups. Of course, we don't want to have a very boring feedback with all the details of the discussion, because this will be incorporated into a conference report. So there you will find much more details about the different outcomes from the discussion. But what we want here, and as you know, you have been discussing on a very provocative or challenging or the main point of your discussion. So we want to share all that. And then we would like to check your views on whether you agree, disagree, and so on, to give it a bit more dynamic before I give the floor back to Oliver to close this first day. So without further ado, I want to give the floor now to my colleague that moderated the group on demographic shift, which is Elodie. Please, what is that provocative statement you come up with?
Thanks, Enrique. Okay, we have very lively discussions about this topic. I don't know if it's very well provocative, but this is what we came up with. So it's basically give power and autonomy to local communities to make the territories more attractive and viable.
Thank you, Lily. Very, very short. You have actually a couple of minutes to elaborate a bit more, but as you feel. I don't know if you wish to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I have to share the Miro board or otherwise I just...
No need, just a bit of description, a bit more elaboration on that sentence, so we all understand better.
Yeah, of course. So basically the statement was based on discussion on both policy science and civil society role when it comes to demographic shifts. There are many ideas shared. We spoke about exploring the fiscal benefits and incentives of local communities, empowering local governments and giving them more autonomy. Increasing the offer of households was also mentioned as very important. Labor market should be more inclusive. The job creation, especially for young people, should be closely looked at. The promotion and support also of young entrepreneurship was very much mentioned as an action needed at policy level. Also looking at more innovation in the provision of public services. That also was mentioned as something that could attract people to rural areas, more investments in infrastructures also. When it comes to science, well, many ideas, but mainly on the development of community research for tailored solution, facilitate also detailed analysis based on local data. Data was really mentioned as something which was also hindering the research and could be more tackled or better looked at in terms of accessibility and the fact that sometimes data is outdated. We had also then discussion idea of having a rural Erasmus. This is already taking place in some parts in Spain, and it's actually a really nice initiative also to promote rural areas also for young people. There was also the idea of having an instrument like EIP in rural for rural issues, the AKIS also for rural universities working with communities, and maybe I can finish with the civil society. But the main point was to really build on identity and ownership linked with cultural heritage and boost territorial affection.
Wow, very rich discussion, Elodie. Very, very interesting indeed. I take that the group took the local empowerment as kind of key in order to develop further in all these different areas. Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to the colleague that worked with the group on climate change. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was Jorike. Please, Jorike, please elaborate a little bit as well on the catchy sentence or a statement of your group and a very brief description of the discussion, if you can.
Yeah, thank you, Enrique. I think I start with the brief discussion and then move on to the statement. We keep that to the last. We have also discussed the different topics. We worked on climate change and environmental services. In policy, it was said that it's very important that policy shows leadership and also put priority to these topics of climate change and environmental services, and to build on social capital and empowerment of communities, and also land ownership issue is very much related to this in order to move forward. And for science, it said that it's most important to come to the cost-benefit analysis to include more environmental accounting, and to have the trade-off between different services that the environment can and other services. And also to work on the monitoring of environmental services, and also the citizen science is an interesting topic or approach to move forward on that. And for civil society, it's about awareness of the value of local areas and the countryside. And bottom-up approaches should be, not surprisingly, should be promoted. So it was very much about governance structure, not so much about the environment or the technical side. We discussed very much that governance structure is central to moving forward. And our statement is related to the pricing issue, is that the cap is just subsidizing consumers and retailers. So later on, you can have a vote on this one. We move to the next subject.
Thank you, Jerike. That is not provocative at all.
No.
Thank you very much. I see you have had a very good discussion there. As I said, we will capture many of these points in the final report of this conference. I would like now to give the floor to our third colleague, which actually I think it is myself, that we discussed about digitalization. I have to say, we shared some of the views that were explained by Elodie in her group. I think we started by something that could be already a statement in itself, whether digitalization it's an objective or it's an instrument that we should apply. And I think we agreed that it's the latest. Basically, digitalization needs to start from the needs on the ground, and there has to be support in order to facilitate the use of digital technologies to address the specific needs on the ground. We identified, of course, different gaps and things that need to be improved, particularly in relation to infrastructure. That's the first basic, we don't call it even survey, we call it the basic right that every rural area should have, and that policy drive towards to achieve perhaps some specific targets that ensure that rural areas get the most up-to-date infrastructure for digitalization. And then we move towards the need of local action and how to support local action in terms of digitalization. And here is where it comes our statement. Basically, we think that there has to be the role of brokers or connectors, those organizations or institutions that are capable of linking up the local needs and the local reality with those that hold the innovation and hold the knowledge on the digital technologies existing. And therefore, we as well talk about the need of supporting this sort of network of connectors that are able to support rural areas in the digitalization of not only the agricultural sector and the forestry sector, but as well looking at the other transversal areas that digitalization is touching, like education, like energy, like mobility, etc. So actions within policies precisely put the policy framework that is able to support these local communities and these local brokers to move forward with the needs in terms of financing skills development, financing investment, and financing the adaptation of existing technologies to be tailored to the local realities. So if I go to our sentence, I need to read it again. It's basically, we need a network of brokers that connect rural and agricultural needs with innovation and technology providers. So I hope I was a bit clear. I don't miss any important point. And move now to the diversification quickly. To our colleague Sandra Oliveira to give a quick feedback as well.
Thank you very much, Enrique. I would say that our discussion was very, we were discussing many different topics, and I can name a few of them. We discussed the need of seeing the possibilities for rural-urban symbiosis and not only linkages, and the need to connect policy to and investment. Also that science should use local knowledge, and that civil society has an important role in formulating visions and also in formulating or contributing to formulating actions. And then we also had this discussion about that there's no one size that fits all, but we need to be context specific. And I would say I'll present our statement, which is we didn't agree on it, But I also got this very good comment from one of the members in the group that in the map discussions, there's a lot of discussions and not necessarily always a lot of consensus. But so I was happy to have that, since I'm not in a map myself. So what we formulated, or one of us formulated, was that the next mega trend will be ruralization. And that maybe doesn't say exactly how it relates to policy, but maybe if I problematize it a little bit, maybe there is a reason. There has been some trends lately showing an increased interest for the rural areas due to COVID, and people want to move out and so on. But maybe we can't trust that this will keep on forever, but actually be prepared for shifting views, possibly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Very good summary. I would like to move now again to the next group, which dealt about governance, and this was moderated by Ellen. Ellen, please.
Yes, thank you. We had a presentation from Samuel from the French map, and a presentation about ruralization, the project ruralization. So interesting that Sandra also said ruralization just now. So I think that might also be an interesting presentation for you to check the PowerPoint slides maybe. So we already had a discussion after those presentations about missing an organizational perspective and innovation in social development. Which, you know, as Sandra actually also mentioned, you know, then there's other people who don't recognize that discussion and the opposition between farmers and society in their own map. So in the French case, the main issue was land use, for example. So there you see that regional differences and also differences between country are already very relevant. And also from the ruralization project, you know, just to comment that there's very different disciplinary backgrounds involved in that project. So that's also interesting. It's not just a purely economical perspective, for example. And then we had a talk about the reflection that there's a focus on young people in the map. There was a discussion about it, and also in the Horizon 2020 project. Well, and a discussion about how we should involve young people, and then of course the discussion again how you should do that then. So lots of discussions about all the topics, but very interesting. And then we moved on to the policy, science and civil society discussion. Of course, because we were talking about governance, we talked mostly about policy. So again, we talked about inviting young people to the table at municipal level, for example, but also about changing the approach to rural policies. Let's see what else is there. Oh yeah, also taking opportunities from foresight exercises to involve stakeholders at all levels. Well, lots of discussion on policy, and then I said, can we please have something on civil society and science as well? And then there was an interesting comment on, you know, that we should be aware as maps in SHERPA that we can have a bias in our map compositions of people who are very interested and positive and want to talk about the future. So, you know, to be careful about what kind of stakeholders we invite and why. Yeah, to also make sure that we don't overlook perspectives that may also be relevant but are not shared within the maps right now. Let's see, what did we say from civil society? Yeah, consider many SMEs from other sectors, different from agriculture and farming, so in relation to the needs of civil society identified. So we didn't talk too much about civil society and science, but I think it makes sense from the governance perspective. And then we also struggled to come up with a provocative statement. I have to look it up. Sorry, Enrique, in my phone. Yes, so I am sure not everyone agrees with me now, because we were literally kicked out of the meeting before we could agree on the statement. But I put the statement, we should open up rural funds to all rural citizens and encourage cooperation. So that's there. And I am sure people still would like to change that statement, but that's it for now.
Thank you, Ellen. Very interesting discussion that you have. I'm taking that governance, also listening to the other groups, governance has been very cross-cutting, because even in digitalization, the main action was as well related to governance and moving even more local with some, intermediate actors there. So very interesting. As well, the point on ruralization. So it's moving back to rural, but in the wider sense as well, as you just mentioned in your last statement. So moving forward just to the last group, we are almost there. I would like to give the floor to Arjan, please, to provide the main point from your discussion, very shortly.
Thanks, Enrique. I'm passing on the work to our excellent note taker, Michael. He will be briefly summarizing and presenting the statement as well.
Yes. Thank you. I will take the approach that Enrique had. So I will read our statement, elaborate, and then I will reread it. So we came up with a statement that is, do we know what we talk about when we talk about the rural areas? Or do policymakers know what they talk about when they talk about rural areas? And let me elaborate a little bit on that. So we talked about very much of two interrelated things, like the one is spatial justice and then a just transition, when we talk about what is going on in our rural areas. So spatial justice in terms of governance frameworks, who's participating, and then policy answers, and which needs to be mixed up with territorial cohesion, so social aspects and spatial justice. And if we talk about just transition, also environmental dimensions such as green energy. Also, we have very different types of rural areas in terms of economic activities, also including towns and cities. And also we have this stigmas that we have. The rural has a negative stigma, the urban has a positive stigma.
I don't know if you have the same issue as I have, that Michael just got frozen.
Yes. I take over here on the spot, where he left off. Well, about the stigma between rural and urban, that's quite polarized, and actually a lot of the discussion was how can we bring more nuances into how we see rural areas, so how we define rurality. And the same goes for what areas are actually considered rural, and when is that dependent on whether an area has agricultural activity, or what about even further remote areas? Is that still considered rural or not? This obviously has a very important implication when we try to make policies, and that diversity and heterogeneity of rural areas, but also people within rural areas in certain regions, is key to actually defining proper policies. So that's what our main discussion evolved around, and that's how we came to the conclusion with our statement. Do we know what we talk about when we talk about so-called rural areas? That's it.
Thank you, Arjan, for jumping in quickly and do a closing remarks. Very well done. It's very interesting to see that the discussion with a focus on basic services and infrastructure led as well to a discussion about rurality and what do we mean by that's very interesting to see. So now we would like to launch just a quick poll to get to know, okay, what are your views about these 6 statements that you have seen? So right now you should be seeing a poll in your screens. I will give you some time to look at the 6 statements that we have just mentioned, and you can freely say whether you fully agree, whether you slightly agree, whether you don't agree at all. And I hope it is working properly, and little by little I will see some votes, which at the moment I don't see any. So please let me know if you are facing any problems with the poll. Now they're coming in, fantastic. So just a quick reminder, the first one, give power and autonomy to local communities to make their territory more attractive. The cap is subsidizing consumers and retailers. There is a need for a network of brokers that connect rural and agriculture needs with innovation technology providers. The next mega trend would be ruralization. We should open up rural funds to all citizens and encourage cooperation. And last but not least, do policymakers know what they're talking about when they talk about rural areas? I got 30 votes, it's half of us. I will give you still 20 more seconds. So, or 40 more seconds. Let's make it 2 minutes. I know some of the questions might not be 100% clear. I can give you some minutes to take some reactions from the floor. We need to make it quickly because we promised to finish the conference at 5:30 and it is 5:30, and Olivier has very useful information to provide to you before we close. So we have 55 responses, 76% of the people voted. This is not increasing, so it's been 2 minutes. I'm gonna close in 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, it seems people are waiting for the very last moment. And 0. I'm closing the poll right now, all right? And now we're gonna see the result. I hope you're excited to see them. Share results. So, giving power and autonomy to local communities seems to be something that everybody fully agrees. There is some few people that do not agree. The CAP is subsidizing consumers and retailers. Here we have mixed feelings. Some people that do not agree, and the majority of people slightly agree. Then there is a need for a network of brokers that connect. Majority of people agree, 60%, and others slightly agree. And the next mega trend would be ruralization. There is no fully agreement, but people slightly agree, although there are some as well, quite substantial, 20% that do not agree. On the last two questions, I think there is a common agreement that we should open up rural funds to all citizens and encourage cooperation. While there is mixed feelings about whether or not policymakers know what rural areas are when they talk about rural areas. So in 2 minutes, sorry, Olivier, just give me a couple of minutes. If anyone would like to react to these results, now the floor is open for them. Or if they would like to say a comment, or if they have seen something surprising that they didn't expect in the result, please, now the time. Otherwise, we move directly with Olivier to close the discussion today. Just unmute and come in, probably simpler. Or I take it that you are all happy with what we have done here today and that we all want to close the conference as soon as possible. So I give the floor then to Olivier to give the final remarks and useful information as well for you for tomorrow, okay?
Thank you.
So Olivier, now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Enrique, for sharing this interactive session. So remember, I said in introduction, my hope is that we feel we belong in a group. So it was a bit too short to reach that, but the good news is that there's a continuation tomorrow. It's going to be a bit on the same principle. We're going to have a plenary, but this time there will not be PowerPoint, it will be talks. So I remind you that we have 3 panelists, Mario Miluchev, who is Director of DG Agri, Hannes Lorenzen for Forum for Synergies, and our colleague Karen Heftsgaard from Nordregio. So that will be the plenary, no PowerPoint, just discussion, asking the panel participant to react to the outcome of today and to reflect from their own perspective on actions to take, their view on the vision and actions that can be taken. And then we'll have a very similar interactive session. So my hope and my wish is that you all come back tomorrow and that we continue creating these interactions and group atmosphere. And then we'll end the conference at 1 tomorrow. So that's my last word. I want to end quickly so that we have a bit of time and we see each other tomorrow. Same place, our desk, the screen, and connection to Zoom. Thanks to everyone, and see you tomorrow. Thank you. Goodbye.